On the 17th of this month, the country woke up to some chilling news: the collapse of a 9-story building in Kiambu County. This added to the statistics of buildings that are crumbling in this country, and so far since February this year, 22 lives have been lost. And the question is this: how do we bring to an end these menace? This week, our conversation on Inside Government revolves around the enforcement of the building code. And we are talking to the Executive Director of National Construction Authority, Engineer Maurice Akech. Thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us here. So when you look at the construction industry in this country, 22 lives have been lost since February this year. 18 buildings have collapsed. How do we bring these to an end?
Thank you, Bren, for this opportunity. As National Construction Authority, our mandate is to ensure compliance in the construction industry so that there is safety of the built environment, there is safety of construction works, and there is also safety of the users of those particular buildings once they are delivered. We are happy that today we are actually in one of the model sites which has met all the requirements of compliance, and I am very grateful that as we speak here, we'll be able to highlight some of the issues or some of the things that people need to do to ensure that they come up with safe and quality buildings so that they can stand the test of time, they can secure their investment, and the people that will be living there will also be living comfortably around the walls that they are occupying.
Since the National Construction Authority was formed back in the year 2011, the country was hoping that finally the issue of collapsing building was going to come to an end. Unfortunately, this has not happened. Why is this the case?
Indeed, it is true we have witnessed in a very short span of time quite a number of buildings collapsing, and this is due to a number of factors. But the main reason why this is happening is because of failure of adherence to the regulations and laws that guide construction, failure to adhere to the standards, and failure to observe the rules that have been put there. For instance, it is expected, just like where we are today, that for this building to take off from the beginning, it has received necessary approvals. One of those is that they have been given planning permission or development control permission from the county, like the county of Nairobi. The NMS has given this particular building the green light to continue and do it. From that particular approval, the NEMA, that is the National Environmental Management Authority, has also, through the assessment, environmental assessment, through the AI expert, has also assessed, and through that assessment, NEMA has given a license, of course with conditions. And then, aside from that, this particular developer also has identified a contractor who is undertaking this particular development. But remember, so that it's also clear from the beginning, before the county gave the approval, they identified consultants. They identified a qualified architect who put this together in terms of the site plan, in terms of the details of how it will look like. Again, from there, they also identified a consultant who is a qualified engineer or a consulting engineering firm who is also has used the architectural drawings to prepare what we call structural details. Yeah. Now, the architectural drawings and the structural drawings together have been approved by the county. Now, this is what the quantity surveyor has used to prepare a bill of quantities, from where they have given to the contractor competitively, and that contractor has given them a quotation. On the basis of that quotation, they have hired that contractor. Now, having identified the contractor and entered into a contract,
NCA has been given the mandate by law to ensure that all buildings in this country are safe for occupation. Would we say that you have failed in your mandate when you look at the fact that 18 buildings have collapsed in the last 7 months or 9?
Well, first of all, the answer is no. NCA has not failed in its mandate. Number two, it is good to understand that there's what we call collective effort and collective responsibility in regards to regulating the construction sector, because there are various specialists, there are various professionals acting, and they are required so that at the end of the day, it's a holistic professional input to deliver a quality product. And I'd explained this earlier, but allow me just to revisit it again. Because, for instance, for a quality building to be done, first of all, you need an architect, who is regulated by the Board of Registration of Architects and Quantity Surveyors.
Borac.
Importantly so, Boracs. Importantly so. Secondly, you need a structural engineer to ensure that the design is done in an economic, safe, and implementable manner. What does that mean? The architect will talk about space and aesthetics and orientation and layout and all that, those functions. But the engineer will ensure that in terms of how the building will stand, in terms of how the foundations will be done, in terms of how the floors and everything that support the building will be done according to the design of the engineer, following the architectural design. This is very important, and the engineer here is regulated by Engineers Board of Kenya. Once the design by the architect is done and by the engineer is done, then the county has to give approval for that development to happen where it is, because it could be a development which is talking about commercial development or residential. It has to be placed where it's supposed to be placed according to planning regulations under the Physical Planning and Land Use Act. Very important. Now, remember, it's expected that at the county, the approving professional is almost a mirror of the one submitting.
Yeah.
You get that at that point of view. So that I am able, as a professional, to review my fellow professional work that is being submitted to me on this side of the county, because there is that mandate to give approval for that development, planning permission. From there, once these approvals are received, again, I told you, NEMA comes in because there is an environmental control that has to be regulated as well. Once all this is obtained, now they need to identify a contractor who will be able to carry out the actual construction work, because all these are happening on paper. But when do you move it from paper to actual? This is where now you get a contractor who is registered by National Construction Authority. And again, this contractor must be qualified to the scope of the work to be done. For instance, if you are doing a massive project like this one, you can only hire a contractor that is has capacity.
Yeah.
And we have categorized them accordingly. So like category 1 is the biggest, who can take up to a project of 500 million, 500 million Kenya shillings and above. Then category 8, which is the lowest category, can take a building project up to about 5 million Kenya shillings. What that means is that every contractor has a size of the work they can do. That categorization is very important to even a developer, so that they pick the right contractor for the right job. And even for other projects that are not buildings like roads, they also pick a class of road contractor. It is good to understand that the design has been done, the contractor has been hired, and the work is beginning after NCA has given compliance certificate.
Yeah.
Meaning, as our coordination role, we picked all these things that nothing is missing, then we gave you, that's why it's called compliance certificate, that you complied with everything else. Now you can start, and on the basis of that, they get a compliance certificate.
It's proper to say that NCA has the final authority.
It sits at the apex.
It is the apex body that is going to ensure that every one of all these many players have done their part.
Correct.
And it has the powers to say no.
Yes.
To your proposal.
Correct.
This building is not going to start until ABCD is done.
Very correct. And that's where we come with our oversight and coordination role as enshrined in the NCA Act. And now, let's begin from the process of construction, because nothing goes wrong on paper. Remember, everything that will go wrong on the ground. So what happens on the ground? On the ground, yes. You said you will use Architect X, and you said you'll use Engineer Y, and you said you'll use Contractor Z. Are they the ones first on the ground? Let's start from there. That's the first part of compliance, and that's why it's also our duty as NCA to continue visiting sites and check that the people that were there on the paper preparation and development and approval are the same working on the other side. The actual work now to ensure that the work is done properly, the way it was designed and decided.
And this is where you have your supervisors, this is where you have your county directors, NCA directors, to ensure that anything that was said on paper is being implemented.
And this is where now we have a presence across the country, where every place construction is happening, our officers are able to visit and check all these things. But let me clarify this. When they come to visit a site like this one, they will not be coming there every day like the contractor has to come with his team every day. They are coming there on a case-by-case basis because they have what we call a work plan, which areas they'll be visiting at what point. And this is sometimes what happens. We may go to a site and you pick out certain issues that are not compliant. And because the sites are visited at random, you may go to one that has not even been registered by NCA. So the first thing you pick out is that this project is not registered. Sometimes this project is not registered, also has no registered contractor. This project even has no approval from the county. So all this, it keeps increasing in terms of symptoms of the disease that's affecting it in terms of non-compliance.
Do you have enough personnel to supervise the construction industry in Kenya?
We have offices across the country, and we have offices at 2 levels. The first is at the level of what we call the last mile, where any interested party, or like a contractor or a construction worker or a developer, may want to get any clarification or any issues that they want to be addressed. They can go to any Huduma center. So we are present across 52 Huduma centers across the country in all counties. There are some counties with more than even 1 Huduma center. And each Huduma center we have 2 officers. One of them is technical, and it takes care of all technical matters that are being asked from that particular level. The other one is also to support in terms of if you need some advice in terms of application and so on and so forth. And that's very important for any industry stakeholder who is looking for support. The next level is now our officers, who are also based in offices across the country. And we have qualified officers to the extent that we have engineers, we have architects, we have quantity surveyors, we have even construction managers whose work is on a day-to-day basis, go around sites, not just to check paperwork, but also to be able to look around what could not be in order. Even though we expect that if a building already has all the professionals, the professional that has done his work and is covered, and our role is to check whether they did their work by checking all those records, whether they're actually doing the right thing or not. Our country is quite large for information, isn't it? And you may not visit a site every day, as I have indicated. And this is sometimes the advantage that people take. And when you ask about capacity, capacity can be in 3 levels. It can be number of staff we have across the country. It can be the skill level of the staff we have. And it can also be in terms of resources.
Do you have the 3?
They are there to the extent that we can operate.
Are they enough for the workload?
They are sufficient for operations for now.
When NCA was formed back in the year 2011, or when it was operationalized back in the year 2011, it was given so much powers, but one critical ingredient was missing: prosecutorial powers. The only role that NCA can play, or the highest penalty that NCA can impose to an errant contractor, is to stop the construction of a building. But there has been a claimor that it is high time NCA is empowered to prosecute errant contractors.
That was until March 2020. Now, after March 2020, National Construction Authority Act received an amendment through the Business Laws Amendment Act 2020, where there were additional provisions that were given, and there were 3. One of them is on additional enforcement provisions, where today, from March 2020, if we stop construction work and there is continuous non-compliance or violation of these particular issues we have raised, we have the powers to take a legal action, to take that particular offender who is willfully committing that offense to court. And the court, after they determine that there is an offense here, can jail this particular offender for a maximum term of 3 years, jail term of 3 years, or a fine of 1 million, or both. So that provision is already there. And there are cases, as we speak now, that are in court, that are dealing with what we call rogue offenders that continue defying the suspension orders that we keep giving from time to time. So one thing I'm looking forward is that as you watch this space, that one day you'll have a story saying that so-and-so has been penalized for not complying with the construction laws. And that's going to happen soon.
And you're talking about March of 2020?
Last year, yes.
That was last year?
Yeah.
So that's about 17 months ago. Do we have a case whereby we are likely to see convictions going forward?
Yes, we have. As I said, we have cases. They say when cases are in court, you don't talk about them. But we have cases in court. And it's our prayer and plea that those cases come to a logical conclusion in the favor of NCA, where now these people can be found guilty and given necessary punishment by the court of law. When
those amendments were brought to Parliament by the leader of government business, one law that was touted as one of the most defining law in the NCA was empowering NCA to condemn a building and demolish the same. But those powers were never given to NCA. Do you believe it is high time we revisited that issue?
We are in the process of reviewing our act through our, first of all, it started through our internal provisions to enhance the areas that we have identified as that need to be strengthened, the loose ends to be strengthened, so that at the end of the day we can have adequate provision to take what we call, to have a bigger teeth, as you may call it. Yeah? But there's something that is also coming in this space that was also in the amendment that happened in 2020. This is the aspect of development and enforcement of the building code. Remember, the building code we're using today is a 1968 building code. 1968 is, many things have happened. We have had new technologies come in. Even here they're using new technologies. We have had things changing, environmental changes, social changes, and many aspects. And now there's need, including even the global, the climate change effects. So it's now high time that we need to have a new building code that will address and will be in tandem with these changes, and will also be keep pace with the changes in technology. And that is a key thing that NC is also working on. It's almost at the tail end, and we believe it will also give us an impact towards ensuring that safe buildings are constructed and they don't come down after they've been put up.
When you look at the 18 buildings that have collapsed in the last 9 months, what is this one common denominator among all those buildings?
Number one is that those buildings have been inspected by NCA prior to their collapse. Number two, they have been given suspension orders or stop notice or stop order for them not to continue. That means that they have been non-compliant. They have not been following the regulations. Number three has been the aspect of substandard materials for the ones that have been investigated, and even the ones that have been going through preliminary investigations. The one thing that stands out is the low quality of materials that are being used in those projects. And then, of course, the failure of the foundation, the soil failure, because the soil has to be tested, has to be analyzed to ensure that it is strong enough to carry the foundation of that building together with its entire weight once it is constructed and completed.
How many people have been taken to court because of non-compliance of your regulations in the last 9 months?
All the projects, up to the ones that have been investigated, I want to confirm that for every incident that occurs, that a collapse happens, or even any incident where there's an compliance issue, because non-compliance does not mean it's only a collapse. The Board of National Construction Authority has done full inquiry and made very far-reaching recommendations, including criminal, what do you call it, including preferring charges to a prosecution to the people who have been found culpable. And this has been done through the normal institutions that are given powers to do the same. And this, as we speak now, I know there are cases that are still also under additional investigations from the DCI. There are cases already in court by the DPP, and they are ongoing.
As we wind up our interview, you have talked about the issue of substandard construction material. And in this country, we have an institution whose work is to ensure there is adherence to laid out standards. And I'm talking about Kenya Bureau of Standards. When you discover that there are some substandard building materials in the country, are you engaging with KEBS to try and see how to remedy that situation?
If there's a time that all agencies that regulate the construction space in this country, those agencies have been together, it's this time. And if there's a time that we need to be together, it's this time. So to answer your question, last week we had a very good seminar, actually a workshop, where Kenya Bureau of Standards, also having identified the issue of substandard materials, because we engage from time to time, called stakeholders, especially on the material production side, because a material on construction has to be produced and has to meet certain standards. There's also the production on site, which is now where the professionals come in to check the quality. But the production before it comes to site, like the steel, the cement, and all other products that come when they're pre-manufactured, that conversation that was there last week was to identify the areas that we need to tighten our belt as far as ensuring that quality construction materials are brought to the industry. And it was composed of not just the regulators, it was regulators together, it was also composed of manufacturers basically, as well as the contractors and professionals that specify these materials and contractors that use these materials on sites. So it was a very good conversation, and we agreed that it's good to have a coordinated framework that now will guarantee that until everyone has done their part, nothing should go on as far as that's concerned. But that is possible so that we also lessen the length of time to ensure that it's done in a joint and coordinated manner, so that it's not one person doing, another one doing, like that.
Finally, what do we need to do as a country to stop this menace of collapsing buildings?
It's very simple. We know what we need to do. As a country, everyone has what we call the standard duty of care. As a professional, as a developer, as a contractor, all of us, we just need to observe our standard duty of care. And what's this standard duty of care? That we observe the rules that we put for us. We ensure that we comply with all the specifications that I'm given, and we just follow the right procedures. If we follow the right procedure, government can never be wrong to put things in place. Things are normally put in place based on what we call lessons learned. And because we've learned lessons in the past that were meant to led to the formation of all these agencies, it is now good to follow what these agencies are saying so that things do not go wrong. So my appeal to each and everyone is that let's just ensure we do the right thing and nothing will go wrong. It's as simple as that. And let's ask questions where we have doubts. And I always tell this to my fundis, because I regulate them. If you're on site from beginning of the month to the end of the month, you moved from first floor to second floor or to the third floor, you've never seen an engineer on that site, you've never seen an architect on that site, you need to run away from that site because you are risking your life. If you're a developer and you're not using the engineer, you're not using the architect, I'm telling you, you're putting your money down the drains. Follow the right procedures, you'll get everything right at the end of the day. You secure investment and you'll protect the lives of Kenyans. Asante sana.
Asante. Yeah. Engineer Maurice Akech is the Executive Director at the National Construction Authority, joining us this week to help us understand what do we need to do to end the menace of collapsing buildings in this country. And of course, you have heard it from him. My name is O'Brien Kimani. This has been Inside Government. Thank you for your time. We do this again on Friday next week. Until then, have a good afternoon.